All right, Coach.
I can hear you.
All
Can you hear
right,
me?
I can.
Okay,
All right,
good.
we are live. We are live. That's for sure.
Okay.
So let me apologize, everybody, first for the situation here with us regarding our technology. We're getting it straightened out now, and we are happy to have Coach Angela Hamblin-Blakely with us tonight to talk about a very important topic. Coach, why don't you start off, lead us off with telling us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing, and please go back into your history a little bit. You're All American high school basketball player, and so you got a deep history in the game. So maybe start there, and tell us where you played collegiately and on into your professional career.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for having me. But we're live. But yes, I grew up right here in Northwest Indiana. Went to Lew Wallace High School. Was a high school All American in basketball and in track. Played volleyball as well. Won some state championships in track. Was a All State selection for basketball. Was an Indiana All Star. Was a All American, a national All American. I left Lew Wallace and went to the University of Iowa, where I played for 3 years. I was All Big Ten during my time there at the University of Iowa. Had a great time at Iowa, and then left the University of Iowa and went to play the WNBA. I was drafted into the WNBA. I was drafted into the second round, third pick to the Washington Mystics. Uh, I was cut from them, and then I got picked up with the Detroit Shock, and that is where I played my one and only year in the WNBA. And since then, I have been coaching. I've coached from elementary school all the way up to college. And so, also started a non-for-profit athletic organization. It is called Hamblin Foundation. We've done AAU, we've done camps, we've done clinics. So I still kind of have my hand in girls basketball, women's basketball in the area. And so that's just a little bit about what I've done.
Well, Coach, listen, that is a resume that I'm sure many people would be envious of, and certainly I want to compliment you as a athlete, high school, collegiate, and professional athlete. There are many people that had dreams of that. I was one of them. I had dreams of a hoop career, but I never got taller than 5'10", so it was and I couldn't jump, so that was enough. So when you're short and can't jump, basketball may not be your game, but
Yeah.
I am grateful that you took the time. Listen, let me tell everybody too. This is a last minute thing. Today I just was thinking about this topic, and I thought about who can I get to talk about this, and I reached out to Coach Blakely, and she graciously agreed to be on this program to talk about this important topic. Now, of course, this program is actually going to re-air again so people can hear it. If you are listening or you jump on, you can comment in your comment section of Facebook, and we'll try to get your comments on the screen. So, for the purposes of what we want to talk about tonight, Coach Hamlin, as a Iowa Hawkeye alumnus,
Yes.
I'm sure that you were rooting for your black and gold, which, by the way, the same color as Lew Wallace had. Is that right?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
That's right. So you're rooting for your black and gold this past Sunday, and
Hmm.
they did not pull it out. They did not prevail. But out of this, out of this women's Final Four, there are a couple things that I think, even in the women's tournament as a whole. Number one, let's get your thoughts on the fact that this women's tournament broke all the viewership records on television. What do you attribute the surge this year in uh, interest in the women's NCAA tournament? What do you attribute that to?
Well, I attribute it to the fact that I think just women's basketball is pure. I think it's just pure game. I think it's pure talent. We haven't had the luxury of being around for 50 years as far as being NBA. We've been around for the last 20 years, and the women that have represented the WNBA and college have worked very hard to get the women's game to this point. And so I just really I love the women's game because again, it's so pure, it's so fresh, it's new, and I don't mean new in the sense of it being new, but I just mean what Caitlin Clark did at the University of Iowa, what Angel Reese did at LSU, what Dawn Staley has been doing, what all of these wonderful coaches have been doing has just given us just a fresh of fresh air in a sense to in this women's game, and we've stepped up in major ways. So I just attribute it to the fact that the girls are more skilled, they're more talented, more athletic, and we're not just talking about black and white. I mean, both sides are very talented, very skilled. Though. So I love the game.
But I would have to 100% agree with you. And to correct me if I'm wrong, when you say pure, uh, it is really basketball without, let's say, all of the things that maybe the NBA has. Uh, certainly basketball with talent in the women's game. But the focus seems to be really on basketball,
Mhm.
as a referee. I've 22 years now in high school
Wow,
basketball.
awesome.
Yeah, and I've had you on the sideline, and you're great. Let me just say that. You
Oh,
know,
thank you.
but I've seen an evolution.
Hmm.
When I first started officiating women's high school basketball and women's games or girls games, um, there wasn't such a emphasis on trying to be as athletic as the boys. What I saw over time, though, is the interest in basketball among girls has grown tremendously.
Yes.
I would say in those last 20 years. And which is interesting because, you're talking post Michael Jordan and post, that kind of thing. But, now I see the girls games being, having great talent in those games.
Hmm.
But also at the same time, I think at the high school level, girls are being encouraged, maybe would be the word, to choose one sport
Yes.
and not play
Yes.
multiple sports. What are your thoughts on that as a coach?
I grew up in a time where we played three sports, even four, because you ran cross country, played volleyball, basketball, track, some people play softball, all of that. So I grew up in that era where it was not unusual to play three different sports. And now, because the game has grown in such a way, it's year round, which I understand because it goes into development. You know what I mean? It goes into development. But I always say that I really think that kids need to play different sports because you use different muscles. You use different abilities. You know what I mean? And um, again, now with it being so year roundish, it's kind of hard to not get burned out and not get frustrated. You know what I mean? Because you go right from summer basketball right into fall, right into winter, right into spring. And
Right.
so I think that it's important, if you can steal away and run track, track does wonders. If you can steal away and play volleyball, and just kind of experience being on different teams and experience using different muscles and just experiencing a different sport, I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, it is a tremendous benefit, I think. And I grew up in an era, I'm just uh, probably a lot older than you, but I think you went to school with one of my cousins, Anthony Dix. He might have been at Lew Wallace while you were there.
Hmm.
Uh, but I grew up in that same era in the sense of, we played different sports.
Hmm.
And that was very very helpful to us as uh athletes. We played basketball. I you know I probably was a way better baseball player than I was anything else. But at
Okay.
12 years old, everybody stopped playing baseball in my neighborhood. It was hoops. I grew up in East Chicago. It was hoops, hoops, hoops. That's all it was. East Chicago,
Okay.
Washington, Chicago, Roosevelt. Big rivalries there.
Yes.
With in games with I played between Lou Wallace and Gary Roosevelt. I mean, it was all basketball all the time. And
Hmm.
having Gary in East Chicago more than baseball. But I do want to kind of go to this idea of kids not having the opportunity to experience more because of the year-round
Yeah.
thing. uh Volleyball, for example, for girls in the high
Hmm.
school level, you've got the season, which is August, which once the season ends, you would think, okay, a lot of these girls could go right into the basketball season, but they don't.
Yeah.
You've got a club volleyball season that
Yeah.
goes on. You got summer volleyball. As a coach, do you find it difficult to convince young ladies to play multiple sports? I know you mentor and teach the game to young ladies. Is it hard to get them to come to be a part of what you're doing as far as basketball is concerned?
I think it's more difficult to convince parents, because parents are, now because we've kind of isolated basketball or isolated volleyball, it's kind of difficult to convince parents for them to go and play different sports because right now, the whole vibe is I need my child to get better. I want my child to get a scholarship. And, I need them to develop. And so, as a coach, I can't necessarily disagree with that because development comes with time. But again, I grew up differently, and there were just some things that I got from track that just transferred over to basketball. There were some things that I got from volleyball that transferred over to basketball. And so now, again, because it's so isolated and it's encouraged to be isolated, it's difficult to kind of influence parents in that direction because, again, scholarships. Now with social media and cameras and cell phones and all of this different kind of thing, mixtapes and all of that.
Hmm.
Now that has crept in, and so now trying to convince parents to, well, just give them a break and let them play another sport. Sometimes that could be a little difficult.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember when and One came out with their and One mixtapes. As a matter of fact, Netflix has a special or documentary they did on and One. I don't know if you saw it, but it was a tremendous walk down memory lane uh, for and One that came out with their and One tour, and they had their mixtape and all those things that were put together, and you had Skip to Malou end up
Mm-hmm.
in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would he have gone to the NBA without and One and what they were doing? Maybe not. You know, and he had a good long career in
Mm-hmm.
the NBA. But I want to get to what's happened this weekend.
Uh-huh.
So we have four great teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who came together, who played tremendous basketball, and I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts first of all, overall on this Final Four. Was this one of the best Final Fours of women's tournament you've seen?
Oh boy, that's kind of tough because you get the Yukon era, lately it's the South Carolina era, you had the Tennessee era. So this is one that I've paid closer attention to.
Hmm.
But I don't know if I could put it, I don't know, because again, what Caitlin Clark has done and what Dawn Staley has done at South Carolina, and even with, Angel Reese at LSU, and even Virginia Tech,
Yeah,
I
Coach Brooks. Yeah,
yeah, that was amazing. So, it's right up there. It should definitely be right up there with some classics. And I definitely enjoy watching Iowa play South Carolina because everybody thought that it was going to be a blowout, and I said, it's not going to be a blowout. It's
yeah.
not. It's going to be a
I
tough game.
I have to give Coach Bluter, I believe her name is
Mm-hmm.
Bluder. Have
Yep.
to give Coach Bluter credit for her game plan
Yes.
against South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
This was a juggernaut team coming in having won 42 games in a row.
Yes.
Uh, you know, everyone's expectations were that. Probably Iowa team was the one that the only people that believed, the fans of Iowa that believed
Yeah.
that they could beat South Carolina.
Yes.
But
Yes.
everyone's expectations was, to really see, like you said, a potential blowout here. But what ultimately happened is Iowa decided to take away the inside game of South Carolina
Mm-hmm.
and said,
Mm-hmm.
we don't think their shooters could beat us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
as a I played some small college basketball for a very short time at the bottom rung of college ball. Didn't really play a lot in high school, but walked on a team in college. Um, and coach, I'll tell you, when you get to, and I'm sure you played at a much higher level, when you get to big games, the pressure on those shooters gets greater.
Oh, absolutely.
Every
Absolutely.
25 footer, every 20 footer is a whole different ball game as opposed to throwing the ball into the post and shooting layups where there's probably not as much pressure on
Mm-hmm.
shooting a layup 2 feet from the basket as you shoot a jumper 25 feet. Do you think that's kind of what happened in South Carolina?
I think South Carolina, because they were so big, and I remember listening to some of the commentators talk about how big they were. I think they were relying more on their size, which they should have. Anytime you can't coach height, you can't teach height.
Right.
You have a 6'7" young lady that can stand underneath the basket and put the ball in the basket. 6'4"
Yeah.
young lady, absolutely, it makes sense. You know what I mean? But I think where South Carolina maybe made a mistake was that they didn't necessarily shoot the ball a lot. And we saw that because when Iowa packed it in that zone, we didn't see a lot of outside shots. Yes, they shot the ball a little bit from the outside, but
Hmm.
not as much as they were trying to pound it inside. And Iowa had a game plan. We're going to double, triple, we're going to do
Yep.
whatever we got to do. And it worked. It
And
worked.
and I was, what surprised me from a Don Staley team, coach team, was they didn't seem like they moved the ball particularly well
Yeah.
in that game. Now you can credit Iowa's defense for that, but I just was watching the ball movement of Iowa and comparing it to the ball movement of South Carolina, and I saw a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
It was almost as if the South Carolina guards were kind of unsure of making that skip pass or whipping the ball back around to another side as quickly as possible to maybe try to get their bigs open, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work, and I was really surprised that South Carolina didn't make many adjustments in the second half,
Yeah.
because once Iowa saw what was working, they stayed with it.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they stayed with it. So
Yeah, one of the things that I heard Dawn Staley say, she said, we're just going to continue to rely on our habits. And I agree with that completely.
mhm.
But when those habits are not necessarily working, and what I mean is that they just packed in that zone and they didn't allow the big girls to get any momentum,
Mhm.
and even when South Carolina did make a run, Caitlin Clark came back down the floor and made a big shot.
Yes,
So it was
every
just
time
kind
they
of,
threatened, that's right.
yeah, every time. And so it was just kind of hard, even though they did rely a lot on their habits. And even though they did make some big shots, it was just like Caitlin comes down and she makes a bigger shot.
Yeah,
She comes down and she continues to extend the lead. You know
right.
what I mean? And so I just thought that Iowa got up for that game. Of course, who wouldn't? You're talking about the
Right.
number one team in the country. You're talking about a team that has not lost any games. So they got up for. They were ready to go. They were ready.
I would, yeah. You're absolutely right. 100%. They were ready and pumped and ready to do what they needed to do. My big concern from that game was, how do you guard a young lady who might be the only lady player at that level
Mhm.
with Steph Curry range.
Yeah. And
You
see,
know,
you
man, you
almost
were
have
thinking
to
about shooting at that far away.
pick her up before half court. You know,
Yes,
when we played college basketball, one of the things that our coach stressed was, you need to be turned around by the time you get to half court to find your man. You need to sprint to half court, turn around so you can find your man. Well, you can't even sprint to half court with Caitlin Clark.
no, no,
You got to turn around immediately as soon as the ball is scored and find her immediately, because if
yeah,
you don't, she is dangerous, very
yeah.
dangerous from deep.
And I thought South Carolina would press more. You
Hmm.
know, uh, maybe to slow down the rhythm of because Caitlin Clark gets the ball. She's a great shooter on the move.
Yeah.
You know, and so she gets a rhythm with her shot. I mean, you're talking about 50% from 25 feet or better for the
Yeah.
tournament. You know,
That's
that
amazing.
was amazing. That was amazing. So I mean, that was a great game. LSU and Virginia Tech, another great game. LSU fell behind and
Hmm.
came back. I thought it was over. The funniest thing about that game, Coach, and we're going to get into our topic for sure. I promise you that. But the funniest thing about that game to me was how much Coach Brooks looked like um, uh, he plays the good doctor on the TV. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I do. I just don't remember the name.
Oh
Yes.
man, and he's a fraternity brother of mine. He'll
Okay.
Harper. Yep,
Yes.
yep. How much he looked like Hill Harper.
Hmm.
Right?
Yes.
I even had a Facebook post that I put up. I'm like, these two related,
Uh-huh.
that was a great game. That was a
It
great
was.
game as well to see LSU come back and hear Angel Reese say that we're a team that never gives up, never thought we wouldn't make it, and we decided that we're going to turn it on, and they turned it on and
Yes.
came back and turned that game around. So let's get into this other stuff, right? So
Okay.
you got a national championship game. You got LSU playing at a high level, uh, uh, foul trouble,
Hmm.
right? For Iowa, uh, big technical foul called on Caitlin Clark, which made her have to go to the bench.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that technical call? First of all, and I know, give me a coach's perspective. I'll probably give you a referee's perspective, but what do you think about that technical?
So immediately I heard Rebecca Lobo say, no player should ever get a technical foul for doing that.
Hmm.
I disagree.
Hmm.
I disagree. Um, in that kind of game, in that level of game, you have to be very careful with what you're doing, with what you're saying. And to toss, if she had tossed the ball in the direction of a referee, got it.
Right.
She did not toss the ball in the direction of a referee. She tossed the ball as if somebody else was going to have to go and get it.
Correct.
So for me as a coach, I'm like, no, you know, you think, you gotta,
Right.
think. As a player, I get it. Frustrated, you know what I mean? And just out of frustration, you do something that's not very smart. So I kind of get both sides because I've been on both sides of it. But more so as a coach now, man, I would have been livid.
Right.
I
Right.
would have been livid. Yeah, at
I
her, not at the ref, at her.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you, as like I said, as a referee, been doing this a long time, and of course, I'm doing uh, the level of which is a much lower level of basketball than the national championship. But I've refereed regional games, girls and boys regional games, and one of the things that from a referee's perspective, you never want to show up the referee.
Right.
You never ever want to show up the referee. I've had players come and ask me questions. Hey, what did I do wrong? As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to be proactive at the high school level, even of saying to a player, hey, keep your ball, keep your hand on top of the ball.
Yes.
And I'm because I don't want to blow the whistle for carrying or I'm saying get out the lane.
Yes.
I'm talking to players during the game, get out, so that I don't want those game interrupters, right?
Yes.
You
Right.
know, I want people come to see the players play. They don't come to
Yes.
hear me blow the whistle, right?
Yes.
So I think that in that case, though, when you clearly have control of the basketball in a dead ball situation, and you don't, as you said, toss that ball towards the referee. There are 3 officials on that court. Any one of them you could have chose to give the ball to.
Yeah.
You throw it behind your back and out of bounds. And on national TV, the national championship game, those officials have to answer to their observer.
Yes.
And there would be a question, why did you not assess a technical foul there?
Yes. Yes.
Because they can't give you a break in that situation because it's a national championship. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge thing. So
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's move into this topic of how race may or may not play a part. Let's start with what you've observed over your career as a high school player in women's athletics, but certainly in your collegiate career, going to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the racial makeup of Iowa might be like there are 5 black people in the whole state. No, I'm kidding.
Ah,
I know I know the racial makeup is like 3% or 4% or something like that of the state,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
African Americans. Um, what were your experiences I believe you played in the 90s in Iowa?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What were your experience even in 1990s in a state like Iowa playing for Division I basketball as a female?
I have to be very, very honest with you. I do not have many memories of any kind of racism at the University of Iowa. I just don't. I have a few, but not a lot where the experience, as far as being a young black girl in Iowa City, was bad. I can't say that. I did experience some racism, obviously. You know what I mean? You're going to experience something, but that was during the time of the whole OJ thing. You know,
That's
yeah,
right.
that was during that time, and so
It was like choose
after.
sides. Everybody got to choose sides.
Yeah, yeah. And so I kind of remember the campus kind of being divided, but I
Mhm.
don't necessarily remember anything towards me per se personally. You hear different things about, black and white things and stuff like that, but for the most part, I can honestly say I had a great experience at the University of Iowa.
All right. So when you went on the road to some places, I mean, you played in the Big Ten. I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of kept you in the Midwest, but I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys played some teams in the South, and things like that. Did you experience any racism at all in those kind of circumstances from maybe from other players?
You know, um, this is going to be different. We experience um, I don't necessarily know if I want to call it racism. We experienced something. I believe we were in, oh my goodness, I can't remember, but our coach got arrested she was a white lady. This was
Mhm.
after Vivian Stranger, and it was a big thing. I think she was kind of trying to defend us.
Mhm.
Of course, she stepped in, and she was trying to defend us. Something had happened, and I almost hate that I brought this story up because I don't remember all of the details of it, but I do remember that part of it. And I'll say this: I've experienced more racism here in Northwest Indiana as a coach than I
Mhm.
did as a professional athlete and as a collegiate athlete at the University of Iowa. I've
Mhm.
experienced more racism in this little region that we live in than I
Mhm.
have anywhere else.
And you know what? I'm not surprised at that. Let me just say that
Hmm.
I've lived in the region most of my life. I spent 3 years living in Atlanta, and I probably experienced less racial animus in Atlanta, Georgia, in the '80s than I
Wow.
did here in Northwest Indiana. Um, I think, when you even look at a state like Indiana, I mean, African Americans only make up about 9.8% of the population in this entire state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually, I didn't even know that until I looked it up.
Wow.
Because in my mind, I know African Americans in Indianapolis, I know some in Evansville, I know
Mm-hmm.
South Bend, I know, I live now in Fort Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, and of course I knew Gary. I pastored a church in Gary for 30 years.
Yeah.
Uh, so I know that, but I guess when you add it all up with the total
Mm-hmm.
population of Indiana, less than 10%,
Wow.
you
That's
know,
staggering.
that is. I mean, because again, we go places, we see each other, and we,
Yeah.
hey, what's
Yeah.
up? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what brought it to my attention, as far as Indiana was concerned, and we look at sports and athletics, is what happens to minority referees,
Yeah.
minority officials.
Yes.
Um, for years, again, I can say 22 years in this thing, and uh, I've refereed some very, very high quality, high level basketball in Northwest Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Number one team against a number three team, all men and women. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've had many instances where losing coaches would compliment the game.
Okay.
The game was called fairly. Now, no official's going to be 100%.
No.
Just not going to be 100%. I go back and
Mm-hmm.
watch tape and say, I might have kicked that call. I'll send a coach an email. Hey, I
Mm.
I kicked that call.
Wow.
That kind of thing. But you try not to do that at critical points, at all. But certainly not at critical points of the game. Let the kids
Mm-hmm.
decide the game. You know,
Yes.
but they got to do it within the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way in which the IHSAA chooses their tournament referees, I think allows for discrimination, whether that's
Okay.
intentional or not. If a coach can rate an official and remain anonymous,
Mm.
that means I could go and work a game, and that coach could be smiling in my face, and at the end of the game, bam, your rating is a 1 out of a
Yeah.
1 out of a 5. Now they're going to change the rating system next year, but they're still going to have anonymity for the coaches. Well, frankly, I stopped working the tournament.
Mm. Okay.
I've done 7 girls regionals and 6 boys regionals, and could never advance beyond that.
Okay.
You know,
Wow.
and I saw people, quite frankly, that I know, I would not say they were worse than I was, but I know as a referee, we were probably right there together, advanced to the state finals.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things. I mean, even in how games are assigned, Angela, people don't know this, that the officials associations do the bulk of the assigning of
Mm-hmm.
officials to games. Like schools are contract with an association. Well, when you look again at we're less than 10% of the population, we're much less population wise of black officials in the state. And
Yeah.
what we end up with, is the associations are not populated by us at the leadership positions. Let me put it like that.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
one of those leadership positions is an assigner. And
Mm.
the assigner chooses who to assign to a game. Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are a number of things where race and at the worst, racism and certainly cultural incompetence, can play a part.
Wow.
So we have this game between LSU and Iowa, and towards the end of the game, Angel Reese, LSU's star player, or at least one of their star players, um, does the "you can't see me" to Caitlin Clark.
Uh-huh.
Then starts pointing like this. I'm getting this ring, right?
Yeah.
The reaction from the media, in my opinion, was staggering
Mm. Yes.
because Caitlin had done that to South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are obviously pictures on the internet about that.
Yes.
How do you view how the media reacted to Angel Reese versus to Caitlin Clark?
Well, the way they reacted to Caitlin Clark, it didn't necessarily come back up until Angel Reese did it. So it wasn't an issue until Angel Reese did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was as if once Angel Reese did it, and now the research has been done to say, well, why would she do something like that's classless? That's this, that's that. And so now we go back and we see that Caitlin Clark also did it. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's not classless.
Right.
Now it's just a part of the game. No, that was classless as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that Caitlin Clark came out because she needed to. And she
Yes.
said, this is just a part of the game, basically. And that's what it is. You know what I mean? You get in
Lay
that
off.
level of,
Right.
yeah, you get in that level of game. Um, your emotions are high, and you trash talking, you doing what you do. You know what I mean? You've just done something that maybe somebody said you couldn't do. You know what I mean? And so it's all these different kinds of things that's going into that. But on the other side of that, culturally, I understood Angel Reese.
Mm-hmm.
Culturally,
Yes.
uh, corporately, maybe not so much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
uh, and I'm not leaning in one direction more than I am the other. I understand both sides.
Yeah.
I understood what I saw
Yeah.
from both angles.
And I think people who
So
played the game kind of understood that.
yeah, yeah. If you were an athlete, you understood what happened. I think the media tried to make it into something else, and that's why I thought it was so great that Caitlin Clark came out and said something about it to kind
Mm-hmm.
of squash the beef, because
Mm-hmm.
they were going to make it a big thing. They had already made it a big thing. It was national news. You know what I mean? So
But I think, and forgive me for interrupting you, but I think that this is where the rubber meets the road here, Coach. Where you can say when a minority athlete, and specifically a black athlete,
mhm,
responds in the heat of the moment, it's thuggery, it's
yeah,
classless,
yeah,
and then she has to be rescued
yeah,
by the white athlete that has done the same thing,
yes,
you know and what does that say to us about the state of our nation? I mean, to me it says we're still struggling,
oh
even
yeah,
in athletics, with the same issues, or at the least similar issues, that we've been struggling with for a long time.
absolutely. It's obvious, and it's blatantly obvious, and not just sports. And I don't even know. Let me apologize in advance before for bringing this up. But that capital move that was pulled a year back or 2 years back, that would have been a bloodbath if it had been our people. And what I mean
Oh,
by that, brown people, it would have been a
absolutely.
bloodbath. Would have been a bloodbath. And so I was completely astonished by the fact that nobody was shot and killed in that time. So let me
Absolutely.
come back to. So I apologize, but
No,
let me
no,
just
no.
come.
I get it. Please feel free, because
But
that's a pretty good analogy,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
of what was happening.
yeah. So to bring it back to the athletic side of it, um, we see, unfortunately, but obviously, that there is still favoritism. There's still this idea that when a brown skinned girl or a brown skinned boy does it, it's wrong, it's demonized, it's
Mhm,
classless, you know what I mean? It's ghetto. But
mhm.
for that young lady to do it, oh, she didn't mean anything by it.
Yeah,
So it was okay for her to do it and not mean anything by it, but it's not okay for her to do it and not mean anything by it.
right.
So, the scales are so unbalanced. Um, but yeah,
So when you think about it, you know, and I would say that we saw the best of basketball the weekend. Like you said, it certainly, if not, maybe top 10 in terms of the Final Four, and in terms of excitement. I'm adding that to this. Television expanded their coverage. All of these kinds of things you had, and to come out of that and still have a this difficult moment of
Yeah.
saying we have one player who the media treats one way
Yeah.
and another player that the media treats another way. A player from LSU who wears her long eyelashes, wears her hair however she wants,
She's the Barbie.
that the Bayou Barbie, they gave her that nickname,
Yeah.
right? She wears her uniform differently
Mm-hmm.
with one legging cut out,
Yeah.
right? Highlighting in her, I think this is in her words too, her physical beauty as well as her athletic prowess.
Yes.
Cut across to the other side, we have a player who doesn't do any of those things, wears their uniform the same as everybody else on her team.
Yeah.
Uh, likely a gym rat for sure, from a
Yes.
family of gym rats. you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, what does that say? Where culturally we have defined, or do you think we've defined that there's a certain way a player should act, and if they don't act that way, we're going to let them have it?
Well, that's so good, so good. But I think that a personality like Angel Reese, you cannot put in a box. And not to say that Caitlin Clark is in a box. I'm not saying that at all.
Mhm.
I love her. I think she's awesome, and she is the typical girls basketball player or women's basketball player. Wearing a uniform the correct way and different things like that. But the personality of Andrew Reese and even Kim Mulkey, a white woman, she has
Yes,
great personality. If you watched any of the games,
sure,
one of the highlights was her outfits. She
absolutely.
she expressed herself in
And
her
her
fashion.
grandbaby had the same outfit on. So,
So, she even talks about, she mentioned this during one of the interviews at the end of the game. I know how to deal with personalities because I played with a lot of personalities. And
mhm,
so, with that being said, I believe Miss Reese was probably encouraged to
mhm,
be herself. And again, with this white coach, this white woman who is wonderful and great, she was probably her biggest supporter. Don't be
mhm,
in a box. You're not supposed to be like everybody else. You're not
right,
supposed to look like everybody else.
right,
And I think, she's such an example to some of our young black girls because she's a girly girl. You know what I mean? And it
right,
was so good to see. It was just good to see. I think she represented so many different areas of our game. I think
sure,
she represented so many different areas of even our young ladies coming up now. I,
sure.
I think she did a wonderful thing. I do.
Well, here is a again where we see the contrast in that Final Four game, the cultural contrast, the um, maybe even the societal contrast from to
Yeah.
some degree. Iowa's a Big Ten school,
Hmm.
LSU's SEC.
Hmm.
Iowa is in the wholesome Midwest. Corn is, and all of that, and farmers, while LSU is in the deep South.
Yeah.
There are stark racial, histories, at least in the history books
Hmm.
between Louisiana and and Iowa. So, you have these stark contrasts, coach,
Hmm.
that are so visible. Then after this game, you get the media begins to highlight these things, and you said yourself, I mean, that hey, we got two different personalities here. That's
Yeah.
what I hear you saying. You got Caitlin Clark, um, and then you have Angel Reese. Here's
Yes.
what troubled me the
Okay.
most out of all of this. I'm gonna just tell you, the first lady of the United States at the end of this game gives an interview or the day after or whatever the case may be, and says that both teams played great. Yeah, I'm gonna tell Joe, meaning her husband, the president of the United States,
Hmm.
that we ought to invite both teams to the White House.
Okay.
Now I know. I know Caitlin Clark came out later and said, nope, White House is for winners. We lost. I get that. And then once again, she's got to come to the rescue of
Yeah.
this situation. Um, but what were your thoughts when you heard that? And I'm just going to call it what it is, and what I think it is, tomfoolery.
Okay.
What were your thoughts?
Uh, I really thought that she was so excited, and I'm talking about Jill Biden. I just felt like she was so excited about what she had just witnessed, and she kind of has a little bit of influence, and I shouldn't say a little bit. She's got a lot of influence, a lot of power, and I just felt like maybe she was trying to do a nice gesture. But then, like you said, Caitlin Clark comes back and she says, "No, this is for winners, and this has been for winners. Traditionally, going to the White House has been because you've won championships, not because you were runner-up."
That's right.
And so, I really believe that maybe she was trying to keep it balanced in a sense.
Sure.
Um, I didn't feel any malice in it. I didn't feel any I don't know another word to use besides malice.
You
I
don't
didn't
think
feel
there was any racial animus?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I did not pick that up.
Okay.
Um I did kind of think that maybe she wanted to show the girls um I keep hearing balance. I think she just kind of wanted to because Caitlin Clark has just lit up women's basketball for the
Mhm.
month of March, and not
Oh,
even for the month of March. We just
special
got to
emotion.
see a bunch of it
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for the entire season. She's just done wonders with women's basketball, and I think that even though they lost the game, I think that maybe she was, saying that she's still a winner in a sense. You know what
So
I mean?
you saw some encouragement to
Yeah,
the
I
Iowa
didn't.
program. They're going to give you the Alumni of the Year award for that. But no, I get it. I get it. But here's what one of the things that I was concerned about in this. Um, our society has changed.
Yes,
Years ago, there was a movie that came out of Hollywood called Meet the Fockers.
yes,
I have to slow down when I say that, so I make sure I say it correctly. I'm a Christian, and uh, but in that movie, they go to the home of Gaylord, Ben Stiller's character,
yes,
and they get there and they're looking at all the awards. Robert De Niro's looking at all the awards on the wall, and it was like ninth place, 10th place ribbons. It's like,
yes.
well, who gives a ribbon for 10th place,
Right.
right? Um, I brought that up to say that have we transitioned to a point where we are actually saying just because you participated, we're going to honor you as much as the winner. Now, if that's where we're going, what do you as a coach say to your team?
That's such a good point. And forgive me for moving around. My computer's getting ready to die, so I need to plug it up.
Okay.
But I don't agree with that method. And so now that you bring out that point, man, it makes me look at the Jill Biden thing a little bit differently.
Hmm.
But no, again, I didn't grow up in that era. You
Right.
won, you won, you lost, you lost. And
Right.
so a part of that is learning how to lose. A part of
Correct.
that is learning how to win. You know what I mean? Being a good sport. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so now, because everybody gets a trophy, you feel like you've done something great. It's almost as if, and I love my kindergartners, or I love my, I think they graduate from kindergarten, and I think it's awesome. But you're
Yeah.
supposed to graduate from kindergarten.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so now we have to reward you for everything that you do that you're supposed to do.
That you're supposed to do.
Yes.
You're right. My kids used to come home and they'd be like, "Hey, we want money for A." Some parents, you got this scale, $10 for an A, $5 for a B. Listen, I have expectations
Yes.
as a parent. that you're now doing. Your only job as a child is to go to school.
Yes.
And to work hard, to study, all those kind of things. Now I realize that doesn't take in consideration where some kids come from and all that kind of thing
Yes.
and their backgrounds. I do realize that, so I
Hmm.
said that kind of in jest. But here is my concern. We are creating, coach, what looks like a generation of children that will not be able to know adversity. I learned more from instances of racism in my life. I learned more from losing than I did from winning.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Pastor.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, but fortunately, and really, when I maybe unfortunately so much, you only learn from, well, I don't want to say only, but you learn the best lessons in losses. When
Yes.
you're winning, when you're on the top of the mountain, all things are wonderful, all things are great. But it's
Yes.
not until you lose and get your head busted
That's right.
that you have to go back and look and say, what did we do wrong? How can we fix this? What do I
That's
need to
right.
do better? That's when you begin to question, what I mean, yourself, and try to figure out, how can I improve? But if I got to give everybody a trophy for participating, again, what kind of monsters are we creating? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Yeah.
Exactly. So and I put that, and we were talking about that in the context of what Jill Biden said. You know, um, uh, here's what Angel Reese's response was to this.
Mm,
First of all, she tweets out and says, "Joke. This is a joke. You got to be kidding me. We won the women's NCAA basketball championship. Never in the history of teams visiting the White House have we ever seen." Now, these are my words, not hers, but we've never seen a losing team be invited at the same time. Could you imagine Tom Brady's face if he had gotten to the White House and the team he just beat in the Super Bowl, those Patriot dynasty years, was sitting there? I mean, could
yeah.
you imagine what they would have thought? John Elway, another champion. These players that had won Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes. You get there, and the Philadelphia Eagles are in the background. Hey, and you got two wonderful brown skin, to use your words, quarterbacks that did great work in that Super Bowl, and Jalen Hurts is standing behind you, and you're the champion as
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes. Never has that been done. So
Yes.
Angel's response was this, and I want to get your reaction to it. They asked her on the podcast that had Brandon Marshall's podcast. He was one of the co-hosts. She was on that podcast today or yesterday. And this is reported all on ESPN. What are your thoughts about that? She says, let Iowa go if you want to highlight them. We will go see Barack and Michelle.
Okay.
We'll go to the Obamas as a team, wherever Barack and Michelle are. If they're living in DC or wherever they live in, that's where we'll go as a team. And I thought, number one, for a young lady, that was a well thought out response.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a young lady of color to be able to say that if you don't want to give us, we have somebody that we
I
believe
will.
that will appreciate us for what we have done.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
so
Yes.
what are your thoughts on her response?
That's one, I want to say that's amazing. And the reason why I say that it's amazing is because she is completely aware of what's going on. And it has to be because, or maybe one of the reasons is because where she's going to school. One of the things that Angel Reese has been saying is that she's been being fought all year long for being who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's not just because she has the big personality. I'm sure that a little bit more of it is because of her brown skin with that big personality.
That's right.
And for her to have the presence of mind to say, you know, if you want to highlight Iowa, we'll go see Barack and Michelle. I I can't necessarily disagree with her on that because, like you pointed out, even with NFL and NBA players, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't see the runner-ups at the White House. You didn't
No.
see that. They weren't invited to that. And they
Yeah.
knew they weren't invited to that. And it was okay that they weren't invited to that because they were not supposed to be.
That's
How
right.
is it that we are the champions and you invite the runner-ups? How is that okay? And
Right.
so looking at it from this context and with this new light that I now have, I almost have to agree with her tweet when she said joke
Hmm.
because how dare you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is never, it had never been done. And so, and again, I have to give criticism in this case where I think criticism is due from the first lady to not really think through at work, at best, not thinking through your comments, at worst, trying to protect a team that was a stark contrast to the winning team
Hmm.
from a ethnic and racial standpoint. You had maybe what, one or two, I think one or two players of color on Iowa's team.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe
right.
one.
One, yeah. And you have LSU where you'd have to look way down somewhere to find someone that was not a person of color on
Yeah.
their team. You know, um, that was a struggle for me personally to hear that. But I was so proud of Angel Reese, and I'm thinking to myself, if I was 22 years old, would I have had the presence of mind
Yes.
to say
Yes.
something like that? That is a very astute young lady who is very much aware of her circumstances and who she is,
Yes.
and proud of who she is.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
did. We'll go see Barack and Michelle. Y'all go ahead. Now, of course, when I came up to 22, we didn't have a Barack or Michelle, you know.
Hmm.
But for be able to say, we will go see Barack and Michelle, y'all go ahead and honor them if y'all want to put them on a highlight. I just think Angel Reese, stock went way up, from a conscientious
Yes.
standpoint of
Yes.
where
Yes.
where this country really is. And so sports has always, and you probably found this true playing at Iowa and playing in WNBA, playing in high school. Sports has always had the opportunity
Hmm.
to bring people together.
Yes. Yes.
I played a year of JV ball at Bishop Knoll. 3% minorities. That's the all minorities at Bishop Knoll at that time in the late 1970s, right?
Okay.
So um, I had white friends, you know, at least I believe were my friends. Some of them had not spent an hour with a person of color in their life
Wow.
when they got there because they came from communities in Chicago like Hegwish, that was a predominantly or maybe all white ward, Ed Verdoliak's ward, and those people who opposed Harold Washington and all that. You know,
Hmm.
that's where they came from.
Yeah.
But sports, when you get on that court between those lines, whatever sport you played, it would seem that it had the opportunity. Did you feel that way when you went to Iowa as a brown skinned woman, African American woman, going there and playing basketball and meeting people? I met a guy from Keokuk, Iowa. You know,
Hmm.
which I never would have even known that place existed because I played basketball at Missouri Valley College in Marshall, Missouri.
Okay.
Um, when you got to the University of Iowa, though, Division One, did you did you find that unifying experience there between the lines?
Absolutely. Even just on our team, I mean, we were predominantly a black team, but we had some white players on our team, and they're my sisters today. You know
Okay.
what I mean? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, sports has that uniqueness about it that it will kind of blend the lines or blur the lines a lot where we won't necessarily see the differences until something like what we just witnessed over the weekend happens. And
Mhm.
and I'll say this, even going up to Tennessee, my daughter is playing basketball at Middle
Yes.
Tennessee
Middle
State
Tennessee.
University.
That's right. I was going to bring that up. Yep.
Yeah, and even going up there, and it's predominantly white,
Hmm.
but they have embraced my daughter in a way that I love.
Hmm.
They call her Little Courtney. They love Little Courtney,
Yeah.
And so I think basketball, or not just basketball, but sports in general, has that uniqueness about it that, when we're on the court, it does bring a level of unity, maybe not complete unity, but it does bring a
Mhm.
level of unity. But then once the ball is, once the
Once
clock
the
goes
whistle
off,
blows, clock goes off in the horn, do we go back to our respective corners?
go back. Yes.
No. So speaking of your daughter,
Hmm.
great player, great player. And
Thank
she
you.
was such a pleasure to referee her. I mean, it was like, this kid has everything you want in a player. She
Oh, thank
played
you.
hard, she played with intensity, but she played the game the right way. And people, you hear people say that as a cliche, but it's true. She played the game for the love of the game, and she was respectful of her coach. Not one time, and I've done several of her games. Not one time could I see her not even doing adverse situation end up with a smile on her face.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, this kid. So I say that to say this. What Two questions, and we're going to wrap up here shortly. But two questions.
Okay.
Number one, what would you tell her about this experience that's happened the last few days at the Final Four? And then what do you think she would feel? I don't know if she's expressed it to you, if you all have already talked about it. What do you think she would feel being a college women's collegiate basketball athlete at the Division 1 level? What do you think her feelings would be about this?
Well, one of the things that I would tell her is um, is in regards to the whole referee thing with the throwing of the basketball. You got
Hmm.
to know where you are at all times. You have
Hmm.
to know where you are at all times, and you have to know who you are at all
Hmm.
times. So that's one of the things that I've always stressed to both of my daughters. You know what I mean? I know emotions get high, but you gotta, bring it down a little bit. You know what I mean? So that you remember, you don't forget what could be at stake. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Hmm.
that's one of the things that I would tell her, and how she feels about it. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't talked to her about this, but I'm pretty sure she is Team Angel Reese.
Right.
Oh,
She
oh,
will go see Michelle and Barack with her, right? That's right.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
hundred
Oh yeah.
percent, hundred
Yes.
percent.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's good. That's good.
Yes.
And I hope one day I'll get a chance to get her on a program like this, a podcast like this,
Oh
and
yeah.
get her thoughts about a lot of things, and even her younger sister. Maybe I can get both of them on at the same time, and really, talk basketball, talk, about their faith and what their life is like. Being the daughter of an All
Mhm.
American, daughters of All American. That's not an easy thing.
No, it's not.
We, and I'm sure that you've by seeing your daughter, you've correctly balanced, hey, this is you who you are. If you
Absolutely.
want to play basketball, I'm going to love you if you don't. you
Yes.
know and that's a beautiful thing, to let her make those choices in terms of basketball. Last question for you today.
Hmm.
You're at the church right now.
Yes, I am.
Tell me how your faith shapes how you looked at your own career,
Wow.
and how you look at what happened in race relations and the potential racial situation this past weekend.
Wow. That is such a good question. And it's a big question. I'll say this. I accepted Christ as Lord and Savior my sophomore year at the University of Iowa.
Okay.
Life changed completely.
Mm.
I almost got to the point where I started caring more about the gospel than I did bouncing a basketball.
Amen.
That's a part of the reason my career was cut short, honestly. I
Mm.
didn't even care anymore about it because I understood the gravity of the moment. And what I mean by that is, I understood that we have a savior that's coming back and we got a world that's lost.
Amen.
And so I went in that direction. Um, my husband and I are pastors today. We never signed up to be pastors or anything. We just wanted to be saved. We just wanted to love the Lord. So with that being said, um, that really impacted me in a way that I didn't think that it would, because basketball was everything to me.
Mhm.
And you know what I mean? And then but then Christ count comes in and my world shifts.
Mhm.
I can't even describe to you in words. I mean, that's another podcast, but my world literally shifted.
Mhm.
Um, and every decision that I made was, how is this going to glorify God? I remember being in the WNBA. I remember being around some of the women who had alternative lifestyles and different things like that. And I was just like, that's not me. That's not who I am. And no shun on them. You know what I mean? I'm not here to
Right,
bring any of that up.
right.
But Christ had just become so resident and present in my life
Mhm.
that I didn't really care about basketball anymore. And that's
Mm.
I don't and I'll be honest, I don't believe that's what God wanted. I believe that I was just overzealous and I made some decisions that
Sure,
I, can't go back and fix.
sure,
But right now, just answering this question, that's what happened to me.
sure.
Christ came in and my life radically changed.
So as you look at the view, the second part of that question, as you look at the view from the lens of your faith, are you hopeful for racial reconciliation in this country? Are you hopeful that we'll get to the place where we begin to honor the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, where we judge people not on the color of their skin, but the content of their character? A lot of people forget that Dr. King said that.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
yes, he fought against injustice, and yes, he fought against Jim Crow and all of the hatred that he faced in doing so, even to the point of giving his life. uh uh Maybe not even, not certainly, was taken from him as a result of
Yeah.
hatred and racism, but he did say that he hoped for a day, his dream was a day where his children were judged on the color, not the color of their skin, but the content of their character. As you look at what is happening in the country now, and throughout women's sports, but also in our country, what do you see for us going forward? What are your hopes for us?
Um, well, I am hopeful. Of course, I have to remain hopeful that, we can come together and play together and work together and run off the floor together and still be cool.
Hmm.
Um, I think what society or the media tried to create between this brown skinned girl and this white skinned girl was just awful. I'm just being honest.
Hmm.
They tried to create something, they tried to get something there that would divide us even the more. You know what I mean? With everything that we have going on in our country right now, um, why would you pit two young women against themselves after a great game? But yes, I'm hopeful that, as a sport, that, maybe we can cross some lines and, forge some relationships that, people can see that we don't have to hate each other. And we
Hmm.
don't have to be at odds all the time. We can agree to disagree about some things.
Yeah.
We can agree that what Angel Reese did was not classless, and we can disagree or agree that what Caitlin Clark did was not classless, or it was. Both for
Hmm.
both of them.
Hmm.
Either side, we could do
Sure.
that.
Sure.
And like I said earlier about um, some of the white teammates that I had, man, if they called me today and said, I need you to come to some little town in Iowa where they're still living and I want
Hmm.
to see you, I'm trying to figure out a way to get there because
Absolutely.
they embraced me. There was no uh I'm not being around you because you're black. It was nothing like that. And this was in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So sports has that uniqueness about it that I love. And I'm hopeful. I am definitely hopeful that, we can come together instead of being so divided.
I think that's a great point, and you mentioned earlier the impact of the gospel in your life.
Yes.
I don't see any way forward for this country unless the church, the people of God,
Yes.
lead the way in
Yes.
reconciling this country. I
Hmm.
think uh, the church has been co-opted on both sides by elements that should not be the priority for
Yeah.
us.
Hmm.
Jesus didn't say save a country, right?
Hmm.
He said save people,
Yeah.
souls, right?
Yes.
America, and I was this why J.D. Greer from who was a past president of the Southern Baptist Convention, told his convention, the pastors, God didn't call us to save America. He calls us to save souls.
Yes.
Which I think is, kind of swept under the rug a lot, but that is exactly what the biblical calling is. Now, that doesn't mean we put up with injustice. That doesn't mean we don't speak out against injustice. But our primary message is the gospel of Jesus.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've been saying is that Jesus was not just a gift to America.
Amen.
The scripture says God so loved the world that he gave the world. So he's not just a gift.
Preach. Yeah. I'm about to say amen. I'm gonna shout here in a minute.
We get caught up in our little bubbles thinking that Jesus is only here for Americans, and he's not. He's here for us all, black, white, green, yellow. And it's so important that we keep that in mind, as we're as God sends us into our different areas of ministry. Because I tell people, basketball is my ministry. Athletics is my ministry.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, to kind of put Jesus in a box and say he's only for America, no. Yeah. He's a gift to the entire world.
The last ministry I served in Gary, was a multi-ethnic ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Our ministry was 50% African American, 35% white, and 15% Latino. Now, you don't get much more multi-ethnic than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a campus pastor. We purchased a building, the Old Boys and Girls Club, which I'm sure you're familiar with, down there on Fifth Avenue in Adams. And it was said to me by some people higher up, well, you're your campus pastor here. You probably should stop refereeing basketball. Are you kidding me?
That's interesting.
This puts me right where I need to be with these kids, showing them an example, that people who look like them, many of them, can do this and wear these stripes, and I talk to them all the time. Look, all y'all not going to the NBA or the WNBA, there 50 jobs maybe that open up a year of all the graduating high school players or eligible players that can go into the professional leagues in America.
Yes.
But a NBA referee makes about at least a couple $100,000 a year, and probably works 5 months out the year.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good gig.
That's really good.
A D1 men's official makes over $2,000 a game. Works maybe 4 or 5 months out the year.
Yeah.
And for many of those officials, that's their side job. And so I'm telling, go into something like officiating. It keeps you close to the game. Play as long as you can. But time, as you well know as an athlete, is undefeated.
Absolutely.
What got me into officiating is I got hurt playing in the men's league. I was training for a men's league. And I'm like, this is crazy. I got a cast on my leg from a torn patellar tendon, because in the late 90s, they put a cast on you for 9 weeks. I didn't recognize my leg when the cast came off. So I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not getting paid for this. And a friend of mine who I still ref games with today called me up and said, why don't you start reffing? Oh, no, I'm not going to have coach yelling at me and fans yelling at me and all that kind of stuff. And really, the best line I heard when I first started from a fan was this. I was at Westside High School. I was doing a JV game. I was about to inbound the ball on the sideline. This guy was sitting there. He said, hey, ref, you couldn't make a call with a phone book. I will never forget that as long as God gives me memory. I would never forget that. That was classic. I had to put my head down. I was laughing. I said, wait, I still got to get a ball to this kid. But it was so funny that, and that kind of let me know how to look at fans and all that kind of stuff when you're doing your job as an official. But those opportunities are there to connect with players, connect with families, and to do that through the sport. And I want to commend you for all the work you've done so far
Well,
in
thank
seeing
you.
basketball as a ministry. You and your husband, well, I'm a big fan of your husband, and you as well. And what you're doing to bring people to know Jesus, to know the gospel, and I want to encourage you. If I can do anything to help, in that way, feel free to reach out to me. And we wish both your daughters all the best in their
Thank you.
budding athletic careers. And
Yes.
I'll let you have the last word. Anything you want to say to folks before we get off?
Oh boy. The only thing that I would say is whatever God has called you to, do it with everything you got. That's all
Amen.
that I would say.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Coach Hamblin-Blakely, thank you so much, Pastor, Coach, mentor, mom, wife, you know, athlete. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We're going to cut, paste this, and it's going to go up again. It'll be replayed. So feel free to go to my Facebook page and
Okay.
and get it and share it with as many people on your page as well, because I
Okay.
think this is a great testimony to hearing from you about what you thought about this weekend. So
Yes, sir.
God bless you, and thank you so much for being with us. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you. Hey, folks, we're going to take off now. Thank you so much for tuning in and being with us. We're going to keep it moving here. God bless you, and may the Lord keep you, and is my prayer. And you have a great, great day. Thanks for tuning in today to maybe the first episode of something called Random, which we're going to talk about a lot of different things going forward. We'll probably do it kind of random. Not going to say it's going to be every week, but as topics come up, we'll talk about. God bless you, and have a great, great day.